السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام. السلام.
Okay guys, let's start inshallah today's lecture, but before we start أول شيء خلي تشوف إن إذا عندكم أي سؤال عن المحاضرة اللي طافت أو do you need any clarification for what we did in last lecture? Okay. Okay. Let's start today's lecture. If you remember, in last lecture we've talked about the main thing in our course here, or the main frame, which is the time value of money. Time value of money. And what do you mean by that? Is to calculate the equivalence value economically for the future amount, or if we have something today, we want to see how much we suppose or how much we put a few years back in a history with an interest rate. So all that can be calculated based on time value of money. What are the three main parameters in this factor or in this main frame? The parameter or the factors here, the money with the time, but need the catalyst, العامل المساعد, which is the interest rate. Interest rate. Let's see today, inshallah, the interest rate. What is that interest rate? What is the difference between interest and interest rate? When we said rate, this is in percentage, in decimal, or it can be in percentage. But the interest itself is the amount of money, the extra amount, the difference between the ending amount of the money and the beginning amount. How can we have that? By having the money over time with interest, with interest rate. Without that interest rate, or by default, later on we are going to say just interest. But if you want to calculate the amount, i.e. the interest by itself, the amount, the difference between the beginning and the ending amount, that's what we call الانترست, اللي هي العوائد. قيمة العوائد هي الانترست. الفائدة ولا العوائد الريت، ما ادري شو بالعربي بتكون، هذه الانترست ريت. which is نسبة العوائد. There are two types of interest. Though they are the same, but the interpretation of them are different. The same calculation, the same idea, but even the same numerical value, but different interpretation. What are those? The interest paid when a person borrow, اتسلف. هذه إذا الشخص اتسلف بيرجع المبلغ زائد الفوائد اللي عليها. هاي الفوائد الربوية مالت البنوك. That they call it interest paid. Though he borrowed that amount, he need to retain that amount in addition to the interest. That's why it says here, when a person borrows money and repays, بيدفعها بيرد البيزات هذه with a larger amount. بيرجع البيزات بمبلغ أعلى. So that the interest paid. Why or what did that borrow? Taking a loan, borrowing اتسلف. من الكلمات اللي بتمر علينا ولازم دائما خلاص مجرد ما تشوف الكلمة هاي نعرف ايش معناتها هذه. When he borrow that amount, that money will come to him. بيحسب انه خلاص انه صار غني. Borrow that amount will come to him. He's going to see the money in front of him in his pocket. So it will be an additional to him. It will be like an additional money in his pocket. But at the end of the period, بعد ما تخلص فترة الاستحقاق مالتها, he need to repay it. بيرجعهم مرة ثانية. الترجيع will be out of his pocket. So he's going to reduce what he has in his pocket. Second type, the interest revenue, which is a good thing. What is this interest revenue? When a person saving, investing, deposit money in a bank. So saving is part of or similar to deposit amount. الديبوزيت اللي هو الايداع. السيفنج قاعد يسوي saving or invested. كل هالكلمات هذه معناتها ان he's taking money today from his pocket, putting it away from him. That reducing what he has today, but after a period and obtain a return of a larger amount. بترجع له بنهاية الفترة بيرد له مبلغ أعلى. المبلغ الأعلى يكون البرنسبل how much he put at the beginning زائدا interest that he's going to get. Now both of them, interest paid or interest revenue, both of them are the same. The numerical value are the same for both, yet they are different in interpretation. لو بي على let's say cash flow diagram. شلون بنحطهم دلن؟ How we're going to put them. But before going to this, all of you are engineers. كلكم درستوا الforces. If you have forces here, upward and downward. يعني نقول بناخذ هاي F1 and this is F2 in Y direction. So if we want to get the summation of the forces in Y, this is equal to what?
0.
لا الزيرو احنا بنسوي equilibrium. No.
F1 minus F2.
1 minus
That's right. Thank you. F1 minus F2. ليش خلينا minus؟
عكس الاتجاه.
لأنه عكس الاتجاه.
لأن عكس الاتجاه. Thank you. وهذه exactly the same as what we have now. That if you are getting the amount, الحين باخذ على نفس الموجود عندي هنا. If that amount is coming to me, it will be upward, so it's positive. Let me do it. For the first one, at the beginning, I'm going to get that amount. Let's say, for example, $1,000. After 1 year, I'm going to pay that amount with high 1,000 plus interest. زاد interest. Paying at the beginning, it was positive. That's why you put it upward. It cash inflow. هاي البيزات ياتلي. Then after 1 year, if we have an interest, say for example 5%, after 1 year, I'm going to pay that amount if I'm borrowing. So taking a loan, قرض. After 1 year, I'm going to repay that amount with an interest. But come to revenue. Come to interest revenue. It says here, saving, investing, depositing. At the beginning, he's going to put that amount away from him with the same interest. If you are taking that one, 5%. After 1 year, he want to get his amount back. So he's going to get that 1,000 plus the interest. The numerical value for them, the first one and second one are the same. The same numerical value, regardless of the sign, but with different interpretation. Hope that's clear for the first part now, because later on we're going to see the cash flow diagram in detail. See this example. Determine the interest amount and the interest rate paid. And by the way, guys, whenever we're asking about the interest rate, interest paid or interest amount, interest revenue, the interpretation or the symbol for it is very important. Don't mix between them. Saying here, what we need is capital I. What we need for that one, rate, small I. The calculator, the Excel, or certain application or certain box, text box, the small I is different than capital I. How you're going to substitute into that formulas. So I, capital I, did the interest, i.e. here what we have is amount, value. But for the interest rate, regardless, paid or revenue, did the percentage. Like what we have, say, for example, 4%, 3%, 10%, that percentage. That's why it's rate. It is rate. Now, you borrow. ايش معناته هنا؟ That amount will come to you. How much? $10,000. لاحظوا لما اقول دولار بحريني دينار or whatever currency, الunit at the beginning. قبل amount. It's very important to put the units at the beginning here. This one thing. Second thing, not to forget the units, especially with the final answer. You borrow this amount. When you borrow that today, times 0 for 1 full year, which means we are going to repay that amount after exactly 1 year. After exactly 1 year, to pay it in here. This is 1. Now, how much to pay there? That's a future value in the future, after 1 year, which is in the future. How much to repay? Knowing what? Only the interest, or sorry, the principal, what we call that, is the principal amount at time 0. Now let's say what else we have. Must pay back $10,700. بيرجعون على الاف هذه $10,700. Which means what? That F is P, what we have here, this P, plus I. The P we know it's 10,000. So how much is I from there? The remaining, which is the difference between the ending amount minus or with the beginning amount. So interest and here the 10,700 minus the 10,000 will give us the I, which is $700. $700. The difference between those two. Ending minus the beginning. The interest rate. This is similar to calculating the error, i.e. by taking the difference between the final minus the beginning, divide by the beginning or the initial. So 10,700 minus 10,000, which we have it here, 700, dividing by that 10,000, multiply by 100% just to have it in percentage. So it will be 7% per year. Now things now need to be, or we need to stop that, the units, and notice those decimals in there. Why to show or why to put that decimals in our answer? There is no decimal in here. Why we put a decimal with that amount? Any clue there, guys?
More accuracy.
More accuracy. But what about 7%? We don't need the accuracy there. Actually, that decimal, since what we got here is an integer number, the exact number, we don't have any decimal in there. For dollars, how many cents we have in a dollar?
100.
That's right, Ali. Thank you. 100 cent. 100 cent. For Bahraini dinar, how many fills we have?
Also 1,000.
1,000. So here we have 100, and here we have 1,000. But when you said 100, this is $1, and we said 1,000, this is 1 Bahraini dinar. If it is less than that, 99, or let's say from 1 cent up to 99 cents. That's why when we have dollars, always need to put decimals, not more than 2 decimals for dollars. Not more than 2 decimals for dollars. Even if they are with no decimals, 0, put the 2 zeros as what we have in here, 0.00. Please take that note, put it in front of you. Later on, if we have, for example, the problem out of 10 marks, 1 mark will go for those 2. Even if you get it correctly, I mean, the final answer was correct, missing a dollar or missing a decimal, we are going to lose 0.5 for each one of them, i.e. 1 mark, 10%. So don't miss that. For a Bahraini dinar, it's up to 3 decimals. For a dollar, it's 2 decimals. See another example. A company plans to borrow $20,000 from a bank. Borrowing, same thing. They are going to borrow 20,000. So let's do it. Do you want to borrow that amount? So that $20,000 will come to them. This amount will come to them at time 0 with interest 9%. After 1 year, for 1 year, so n here is equal to 1. N, which is number of periods. What we have here, just 1. How much is supposed to repay later on? And again, what we have here is the principal, that the principal amount plus the interest. Compute the interest. Yes. So how much is the interest? Thank you. How to calculate that? I is equal to what? That the principal, 20,000. Multiply by, what we have is 9%. So don't say 9. No, it's 0.09, i.e. 9 divided by 100. So no need to show this directly, 0.09. Why? Just to convert it from percentage to decimal. So what we have here is $1,800. $1,800. Now, how much they are supposed to pay at that amount there, at that period, equal to the principal, which is the 20,000, plus that interest, 1,800. Notice what we have now, which is equal to 21,800. Now, notice what we have. What is that? Did the first amount at time 0, present value at time 0. So this is the principal, i.e. P. 1,800. From where we get it? We get it from here, which is P multiplied by I, plus P multiplied by I. If we take a common factor now, P, so F equal to P1 plus I. That's the basic formula. F equal to P multiplied by 1 plus I. This is straightforward. This formula now it's only for 1 year. Be careful now. Only for 1 year. عشان لا حد يقول لا انت ما اعطينا هاي الفورمولا دي. It will be applied for 1 year. What about if we have more than 1 year? We'll see it in next lecture, inshallah. But today, what we are doing, it's only for 1 year. When n equal to 1. If n equal to 2 or 3 or 4, we'll see. For a simple interest, we'll see it today. For compound interest, we'll see it in next lecture. Let's continue now. So the total amount due after 1 year, 21,800. If I tell you now that 20,000 is equal to 21,800 after 1 year, will you believe me or not? لو اقول لكم الدلين الاثنين متساويين. Are they equal numerically? Numerically ما قلت شيء ثاني.
No.
They are not equal. Numerically they are not equal. But equivalent, they are equivalent to each other. ال 20,000 هي نفسها ال 21,800. When after 1 year. Under which condition? Having that interest of 9%. That's what we call, that amount here is called economic equivalence. Economic equivalence. القيمة المكافئة لل 20,000. When we have an interest of 9%. But if we have an interest of 0%, so what we're going to have here, interest will equal to 0. So total due will be 20,000 plus 0, i.e. 20,000. So 20,000 today equal 20,000 after 1 year. When we have 0 interest. Now, investing example. The same example. But here with investing. Calculate the amount deposited 1 year ago. إيش معنى deposit? What does deposit mean?
يعني ايداع.
الإيداع. إيش معنات الإيداع علي؟
معناته تسديد دكتور مو
شلون؟
يعني اللي دفعته.
اللي دفعت يعني طلعت الاماونت طلعت من عندك صح؟
صح.
يعني it will be downward يعني بتكون على تحت. Okay. So let's see what we have in here. Calculate amount deposit 1 year ago. 1 year ago معناته شنو؟ ان هاي من سنه سوى deposit. احنا هني اليوم. To what? To have 1000 now. اليوم بيكون عنده 1000. كم خلى؟ سوري. Is upward here to have it today. كم خلى؟ لكن هذه هنا بتكون هي -1 1 year ago. How much he put here at that period, how much he deposit, how much he saved to have 1000 today, knowing that the interest equal to 5%. We need to calculate that P. So how to do it? How to do that?
ناخذ ال1000 نضربها في 105%.
تاخذ ال1000 تضربها في كم؟
105%.
95% مفروض.
المفروض تكون 95%. بس لو تاخذها تضربها في 95% كم تعطيك؟ تعطيك 950 صح؟ Which is not right. Let's do it.
دكتور نقدر نعوض بقانون الاي سمول.
مو تعويض القانون I small like what we did earlier. Just recall what we did in the previous slide. We said to calculate the F equal to what? The principal plus the I. The I here equal to what? The principal multiplied by the small I. Take a common factor here. P 1 plus I. صح؟ يعني أخذنا common factor هذا ال P صارت هنا هاي equal to ال F. معناته اللي قال نضرب في واحد قال 105%.
اي انا
سيدي شو نسوي فيها ال 105% هذه؟
هذه بيحط اياها الفائده راس المال وبزيد عليه الفائده بصير 1050 دينار.
لا انا ال1000 هاي موجوده عندي الحين، انا بنشوف كم دفعت من سنه عشان اوصل حق هاي ال1000. اوكي خلينا ناخذ القانون هذا اللي سويناه هنا الحين. So what we have here, this amount here 1000, this is the future amount. هذا الفيوتشر. البي هي التايم 0 or time minus 1 اللي هي السنه اللي قبل. How much I put there? I don't know. 1 plus I. الاي هنا عندي 0.05. معناته 1000 divide by 1.05 هنا بتعطيني البي. هذا اللي بتعطيني البي. اقسم على 1.05 شو كم بتعطيك هنا؟ 1000 divide by 1.05
952.38.
952.38. That's right, thank you. P equal to $952.38. يعني ما بتكون 950 او 1050 لا. والفرق هنا بسبة القانون شلون عوضنا فيه. الاماونت at the beginning over 1 year, how we worked with that. شلون قدرنا نحصل القيمة دي من هاي القانون. ولحد الحين القوانين ما تشينا فيهم. I'm here giving you the idea how to get it later. Now, the total amount accrued $1,000 is the sum of the original deposit اللي هي كان principal. أنا أعيدكم كلمة principal أنا بيكم يكونوا فاهمين عادل هاي كلمة principal اللي هي basic or initial amount and the end interest اللي هو الانترست اللي تحصلوا عليه. if الx اللي هو الانون هنا احنا من شوي خدناها p يعني بناخذها x is the original deposit then لاحظوا ال 1000 which is the future equal to ال p or ال x plus that x multiplied by 0.05. هذا ال principal at time minus 1 وهني ال interest x multiplied by ال I will give us that x or ال p equal to 952.38. So how much the interest he got here? كم حصل interest؟ ما حصل 50. هو اللي حصله the difference between 1000 and this one here, so 47.62. 47.62. Hope that is clear. What we are doing now, we are doing yes.
في الامتحان بنتحاسب على القوانين ولا عادي نحل بأي قانون بس يعطينا نفس الجواب؟
احنا لحد الحين ما اخذنا قوانين لبنى، للحين ما دشينا في قوانين. ان شاء الله بتشوفون هاي على كل ستيب. واذكركم مره ثانيه next lecture we're going to start with الكالكوليتر. يعني غير قوانين بعد الكالكوليتر بتسهل علينا العمليات الحسابيه كامله. We'll go through الكالكوليتر or we're going to use الكالكوليتر. بيكون وايد اسهل باستخدام الكالكوليتر. I don't know which formula to use. The calculator will give me the final answer. What we need is just to show the standard notation اللي هو الفورمulation. الفورمulation هي شيء ثاني بعد نشرح لكم اياه من المحاضره الجايه ان شاء الله.
اوكي.
يعني لا تستعينين لبنى لا تستعينين. You're going to see it step by step ان شاء الله. Okay. So let's see the terminology and symbols that we are going to use throughout this course. In engineering economics, in finance, in corporate finance, in investment. أي كورس من الكورسات هذه will see those terminologies. And by the way, those terminologies are built in في الإكسل في الكالكوليتر certain formulas using this terminology and this symbols. So let's see what are those. Let's start with the first one, which is the P. What is this P? What is P? Actually, they're the present. Let's say a present value or at time 0. Why? We are going to distinguish between them and notice the unit for it. The P is amount of money. F, it's amount of money, which is in the future. The value or amount of money at the present time, or time zero. إذن ليش present time مو هو نفس time zero? Sometimes not. Either at the present time or time zero. Also, it refers to as present worth, present value, net present value, and capitalized cost. In our calculation, in a few chapters or in coming chapter, we are going to see the present value, net present value, present worth. But in chapter 5, inshallah, we'll see what is that capitalized cost, which is part of the present, but for certain condition, under certain condition. So that's why they call it capitalized cost. Now, let's come to the idea here, why we call it present time or time zero. Take, for example, if it is at time zero, it's a present value. Want to find the future for it. To find the future. انتوا لاحظوا دائما اذا خليت هاي تحت اخلي هاي الثاني equivalent حقه اخليه فوق. ويا الوقت بتعرفون ايش معناته دي. If it is for a single payment, what we have here now is a single payment. Now time zero, at time zero, there's a present. But what about if I want to find a present value here at time, say for example 5, for cash flow here or for that future value tier 8. So what I need is to calculate only over that 3 periods. الفرق 5 ناقص 8 ناقص 5 اللي هو 3 periods. 1, 2, 3 periods only. فهذه بتكون ال present in here the present of that future. In here the present for that future, but to find it specifically at time zero. And at the end, to bring anything from future somewhere at any period in here, this the present value for that future value. Inshallah, we'll see them, or it will be more clear within next lecture or the lecture, or let's say within next week, inshallah. Come to the second terminology and second sample, which is P. Sorry, F. We finished with P now. The unit for P was dollars. The unit for F again is dollars. What is F in the future? والله يبعتكم كلكم عن F. Value or amount of money at some future time. Value or amount of money at some future time. Again, come to that. Say if you have 1,000 in here, after, say for example, again 5 periods, how much that future? Or after 2 periods, how much will be that future? Or after, 4 periods, how much is that future? If you calculate it once, so the other will disappear. Did the equivalent value from year 1 or from year 0 to year 2. أي to the right of it. بتروح على يمين الفاليو هذه. Any value, any calculation for a future value or for that present value in the future, أي year 1, year 2, year 3, up to year n, it is what considered as a future value, regardless of in which year you are going to find. Now, also it's called future worth or future value. Now, for both of them, as what we showed there earlier for the cash flow diagram, the simple F, P, and the F represent one-time occurrences. One-time occurrences. You are going to see it only once. For that cash flow, for a specific cash flow. Say, for example, you are going to get 1,000 after a year. 3,000 after 2 years. So after a year, that 1,000 is a single cash flow. it will be future value for today. After 2 years, that 3,000 will be a single amount again after in year 2. A future value for today's value, or the date of today, for now. To construct or to plot a cash flow diagram showing P, showing F, periods, how many periods, and what we have here, I, the interest rate. We can have P to calculate F, or we can have F to calculate P, or we can have both of them to calculate I, or to have P, I, F to calculate N. It should be clear that a present value P represent a single sum of money at some time prior to the future value. هاي اللي قلناها من شوي هناك. At some time. Which means what? Say, for example, if we have value here, 3,000. You want to find it at year, let's say here, 7. You find the future worth for it. So there's a single sum of money at some time prior to the future. I.e. to the left of that future. Want to find it to here, to bring it to the future from year 2 to year 7. فدائما تحتسب هذا 3,000 as present for that amount. Whether it's year 1 or year 0 or year 2 or year 3 up to year 6. It's a present for that in year 7. But if it is in year, say for example, we have it in here. It will be what? A future value now for that one at year 7. For at year 8, you want to find it in here for year 7. This will be the present value, not a future. The present value, not a future. يعني إذا كان calculation بيصير أو بيتحرك من 2 إلى 5 أو 2 إلى 7 إلى المستقبل، هني بتحسب الF. وإذا كان بيتحرك من 8 من 9 من 10 إلى 7 هني بتحسب الP. عشان بس إنه يكون كلير حكم كلكم هنا. A. That A is not straightforward like P or F. وعشان كذا مو بسهلة إن الواحد يحصل A مباشرة. But if you understand it well, if you work with it, it will be easy. What is that A? It's an annuity. إيش معنى annuity بالعربي؟ سنوي. أي per unit time. It's dollars per year or per month or per week or per day or per quarter, per semi-annual. So it is currency or amount of money per unit time. To get or to have that A, we're supposed to have 3 conditions. What are those 3 conditions? Series of consecutive. يعني متواصل مو مقطع. ما في interruption between them. Series of consecutive. Equal. End of period amount. Series of consecutive. Equal. And the third condition, end of period amounts of money. ايش معنى consecutive؟ متواصل. الايكوال الانستولمنتس اللي بتندفع، الاقساط اللي بتندفع، الاقساط ثابته. مو يوم مو شهر تدفع 100 دينار، شهر الثاني تدفع 150، شهر الثالث تدفع 80. No. How much you're going to repay the bank, for example, say for example for buying a car, you're going to pay them over 48 months or over 60 months or over 72 months or 84 months monthly. That's why it will be consecutive. This first thing. Second thing, a constant amount or equal amount. كل شهر تدفع مبلغ ثابت شهريا لحد ما تخلص قيمة القرض اللي عليك. When to pay that? End of period. If you are taking a loan today, you are not going to pay now. You are going to pay end of the first month. end of the second month, end of the third month. Man, that's why it's end of period. End of period. عليه في أي سؤال على دي؟ قالوا اتحرك على حق اللي عقب. Is there any question for that? Okay. Also that annuity, A, it's called annual worth. Chapter 6 completely, we are going to talk about that annual worth. But that annual worth is just an annual worth analysis for different or for multiple alternatives to select between alternatives with the same idea. So A always represents a uniform amount. Uniform amount, i.e. what? The same amount each period. Same amount each period. Like شهريا, سنويا, per unit time, we're supposed to pay or to get exactly the same amount. That what extends through a consecutive interest periods, i.e. over number of periods, end of period with interest. That's why it says here consecutive interest periods. Now let's see the cash flow diagram for it, how it's going to look like. The cash flow diagram for that annuity. Notice if what you have or you are taking a loan in here, you need to now repay, or sorry, you are depositing an amount here. Let's say, for example, 20,000 with an interest rate of certain interest rate. Let's say 8%. How much you supposed to get in annuity over number of periods, number of years? We are going to consider those periods. And by the way, the first period, you don't have to write that. I mean, not to show it in the cash flow diagram, the first period. The second one, third one. The first period is between 0 and 1. So the first annuity you are going to get out of that investment will be end of the first year. When to get the end of the first year? When we reach time 1. So that amount here is for the first period, not for this. No. And here, after finishing the second period, we're going to have the second amount. After finishing the third period, we're going to have that. After finishing the nth period, we're going to have this. And notice something else here also. All of them are what? They are equal. They are consecutive, non-interruption. What we put in here, just if say, for example, what we number of years there, let's say 20 years, over 20 years. I'm not going to plot them all. What you need is to plot the first one, the P, then this year 1, year 2. I'm not going to plot up to year 20, 30, 40. Let's say here up to year 30. So just plot the first one and the last one, connect between them. We know now what we have here is the annuity. Even with the number, I don't want to show them all. Just put that sign. It means here it's a cutted line, but it will be continuous as it is. I mean, with the same pattern as what we have in here. End of period. And notice that P for that annuity is 1 time to the left of the first annuity. 1 time to the left of the first annuity. Always 1 time to the left of the first annuity. Why is this? Because end of period. That's end of period. Taking a loan here or investing in here, the first payment or the first revenue or interest or whatever cash flow will come to you will be at the end of the first period. Now, N. We keep seeing N. What did that N is number of periods, either years, months, days. So actually is number of interest period, number of interest period. Why we're saying interest? Because we are going to apply interest rate over those periods. It can be a life of the project, life of investment, a life of a loan. I, percent per year, percent per month, percent per day, a percent per unit time. It's a percentage per unit time. By default in our course, in this course here in 300, in MENG300, we're going to use percent per year, compounded yearly. So by default, we are going to use the first one, unless it's mentioned something else. So interest rate or rate of return per time period and a percent assumed compound rate. At the end of this today's lecture and coming lecture, we'll see what is that compound rate. A T, a time stated in periods, years, month, days, over a number of a year there over an N, certain time over that timeline. We can go for year 3, year 5, year 4, knowing that the life of our project is, let's say, 20 years. It doesn't mean that we cannot go to year 2 to do the calculation in year 2 or year 7 or year 5 or whatever year. That's why we put it in a small letter T. Now, for many engineering economy, noted the dimension here, involve the dimension of a time. Involve the dimension of a time over certain times. At least 4 of the symbols. 4 of the samples. Which symbols? P, F, A, I, N. Did the majority. Did the majority of our samples. Later on, we are going to see when we come to chapter, end of chapter 2, 2 other symbols, but did the main symbols in our course. And by the way, not on our course, no, in engineering economics, in finance, did the main samples. B, F, A, I, and N. How much of those we supposed to have to do the calculation? At least 3 of the 4. So if we know, for example, P, I, N, we can calculate either an F or an A. If we have P, F, and an I, we can calculate an N. If we have, say, P, F, and N, we can calculate an I. So at least 3, على الأقل 3 لازم يكون عندنا موجودين to do the calculation for the 4th or the missing parameter. الكاش flows already we talked about it. ما شاء الله عليكم. اوكي فاهمين عدل الحين اتمنى تكونوا فاهمينه صح، فاهمينه عدل. الكاش in flows, cash out flows. الان flow الامount that will come to us, will come to our pocket, will increase our wealth اللي بتنحسب عنا على ويانا in positive. So that called cash inflow, amount of funds flowing into the firm. الكاش outflows, amount of funds flowing out of the firm, The net cash flow. The net cash flow, if we have in the same year, say for example, you have your own business, monthly, you are paying expenses and at the same time you are generating revenue. الريفينيو هي شنو؟ cash inflow. العوائد. الريفينيو cash inflow. الاكسبنسز cash outflow اللي هي مدفوعات قاعد تدفعها من ايجارات، من رواتب، من services and so forth. In the same month you paid outflow for that expenses and you generate revenue. So what is the net between them? The net cash flow. So cash inflow minus cash outflow. Cash inflow minus cash outflow, because you don't want to show both of them in the same year. Let me show that. Say for example, in this year here, you are generating 5,000 and you are paying in expenses 3,500. I don't want to see those two together. So what we can do, we can get the net cash flow, to put that into the difference between them, 1,500. Positive or negative? It's positive. So it will be upward of 1,500. It will be easier for us later on to solve this. So the assumption for analysis, as I mentioned earlier, end of period. طلبة الكيميكال اللي عندهم financial graphical calculator, make sure not to change to other different period. You can have it beginning of period, we can have it end of period. If it is beginning of period, it's going to change the answer. So make sure to have it end of period. Later on, or starting next lecture, inshallah, I'm going to explain using the calculator, financial calculator, the Casio FC 100 or 200. So the funds flow at the end of a given interest period. The cash flow diagram. Extremely valuable analysis tool. يمكن لاحظتوا كل ما اعطيكم سؤال كنت اسوي الكاش فلو diagram. I know how to solve it directly. No need to show that cash flow diagram. But later on, since we are going to have mix of cash flows up and down, single cash flow, single amount, with annuity, with different types of cash flows, we need, it's a must to have that cash flow diagram, a CFD, to make it easy for us to solve directly, to solve the problem with no mistake, without having any error in our formulation. So that the first step, whether it's easy or difficult, the first step in any problem is you need to show that cash flow diagram. A graphical representation on a time scale over a time scale, a horizontal line, timeline. A horizontal one does not have to be drawn to exact scale. What does it mean? ما بيكم كل واحد والله ميود لي مسطره وما شنو قاعد يسوي لي ديفيجن هناك من سنه لسنه. It does not. You have to do that. But need to be what? Neat and properly labeled. To show labeling. I know this at time 0, this at time 1, this at time 2, how much cash flow in the first year, how much cash flow in second year, and so forth. Required on most in-class exams and part of the grade or for the problem at hand. يعني ضفت هنا بس عشان اتاكد ان كلكم عارفين عن دي الشيء. Not to miss it, not to lose marks, and I know you can do it. وهذا عليها تقريبا بعض المسائل يمكن عليها درجتين او 3 درجات من ال10. 30% for that. So not to lose those marks. يعني شوفوا شلون درجات قاعد توزع. وايد من الطلبه يضيعون درجات. He missed a lot of marks because of this. It's an easy. We know it's an easy. We are giving you just to see your understanding for certain parts. So don't miss or don't lose them. A typical cash flow diagram might look like this. By drawing a timeline showing a number of years, a period. You don't have to label this. Once you put it from 0 to 1, so we know this is the first period, this is the second period, and so forth. And here the last one, this is the nth period. This is the nth period. Show the cash flows. To put the cash flow that on hand. We have a time 0, we have a time 2, n-1, we have a time n, upward or downward. So always assume end of period cash flows. Always assume end of period. The cash flows are shown as directed arrows. Upward, it's positive. Downward is negative. Upward, this is inflow. Downward, this is outflow. Displaying cash flows. It's sign conviction. We already talked about this. So positive cash flows are normally drawn upward from the timeline, but the negative cash flows are normally drawn downward from timeline. Let's see the different perspective for the same amount. Say, for example, you borrowed $1,000 from the bank. The bank here will be considered as what? A lender. A lender. And yourself as a borrower. A lender is going to pay that amount, so it will be cash outflow from him. The borrower will be cash inflow. The calculation will be the same for both, but the interpretation here will be different. Let's say the first for the bank, from the lender's perspective, Let's say, for example, you took a loan here of 5,000 and you need to repay it, or sorry, not a loan. Okay, sorry. You took a loan from a bank, 5,000. So the bank here is the lender. That amount, 5,000, it will come to you. So it will be cash outflow from the bank. But later on, you are going to pay installments, الأقساط, $1,100 per year. It will be outflow from you, but inflow to the bank. Now this is the borrower, vice versa. اللي تلاحظون انه بس انه انقلب الكاش فلو دايجرام، اللي كان فوق صار تحت واللي تحت صار فوق. Because the lender here is giving away 5,000. The borrower is taking that 5,000. Then the borrower is going to repay the bank yearly of 1,100. So the bank will receive that amount, 1,100. The economic equivalence. Again, we've talked about it when we did the example earlier at the beginning of today's lecture. What is that? The 20,000 now is not equal in magnitude to 21,800 1 year from now. They are not equal. What actually, they are economically equivalent. Why? Because if we have an interest of 9%, so but $20,000 now is economically equivalent to 21,800 1 year from now, if the interest rate is 9% per year. Two sums of money at two different points in time can be made economically equivalent of what? When to have them equivalent, economically equivalent. If we have interest rate and we have period, number of periods. Without those two, nothing will happen. The same amount. Say, for example, 20,000. You invest money today of 20,000 with an interest rate of 20%, not 9%. And in the same day, you would have drawn that amount. How much you are going to have? The same 20,000. Exactly the same 20,000 with no increase on it, with no interest. But if you have 20,000 today, after 10 years with zero interest, 0% interest after 10 years. So how much that amount will be after 10 years? Again, with the same amount of 20,000, nothing will be changed. So two things need to be together. Two sum of money at two different points in time can be made economic equivalent if the two conditions here are there. We consider interest rate and number of time periods between the two sums. By that, we've done with the first part. Let's see now the important part, which will build over it in chapter 2. Simple and compound interest. Simple and compound interest. Simple interest is named as such because the interest calculated is not compounded. Now if I ask you what is compounded, احنا فوق ما عرفناها وتحت جات لي is not compounded. مين يعرف شنو الكومباوند؟
أعتقد يعني متراكم.
That's right علي. Thank you. تراكم. قيمة متراكمة. يعني مو بس على البرنسبل، لا حتى بصير interest over interest over interest and so forth. هذا الكومباوند. interest over interest not only over a principal. يعني مو بس على البيسك اماونت اللي اخذتها بالبدايه، لا حتى على الانترست نفسه بيصير عليه انترست. But it's simple. It's simple. Straightforward. You are not going to pay interest over الانترست. No, just الانترست over البرنسبل. وهذا exactly the same as what we have for the banks. When you go for auto mall, the financing for buying, let's say, the cars, you're going to pay it. We call it here the flat rate. Flat rate. That flat rate is exactly the same as simple interest. The flat rate is the same as simple interest. So simple interest is named as such because the interest calculated is not compounded. Calculated on the principal amount only. وهذا اللي بسهل simple. That's why they call it simple. It's easy to calculate. Over what? Only over the principal. Easy, simple to calculate. Easy, simple to calculate. The total simple interest over several periods is computed as what? I'm not going to show you the formula now or the idea or the concept. Say, for example, you have an amount in here of 1,000 over 6 years. I, let's say, بعدها عشان يكون أسهل 10%. 10%. 10% what? Simple interest. It's per year, simple interest. If it's not mentioned simple interest, because by default, it's compound interest. By default, it's compound interest. So we need to mention this. You need to be careful to check. If it's not mentioned about the interest, it's by default compound interest. But if it is mentioned to you, it's simple interest, no, this is something different. It will be a simple one. Now, let's see the calculation, how to calculate. After 6 years, how much you're going to get after 6 years? So the interest, what we did earlier, we calculate for one period only. But actually, the interest here, it will be over a number of periods. With that interest multiplied by that number or that principal. So it's 1,000 multiplied by a number of periods multiplied by that interest. 0.1. So how much you are going to have here? $600. $600. That is what? That is the interest. That's just the interest. How much per year? How much per year? And they are not going to give you per year, but how much will be interest per year? 100 for the first year, 100 for the second, 100, 100, 100, 100. If you add them together, it will give you that 600. This depends on number of years. وهذا السبب when you go for a flat rate with the banks for buying cars, they will be more than happy if you are going to go for more than 3 years, 4 years. If you increase number of years, that's their benefit. The number of years here, that will give them the profit for that car or how much they are going to give you as a loan. Minimizing or going for the lower number of years, they are not in a benefit. They are going to get money over more number of years. هذا كان إذا كان قروض السيارات أو أي نوع من القروض اللي يعتمدون على الفلات ريت. Now, that's the interest. If you come to the future, if you want to calculate the future here, the future will be how much? The 1,000 principal plus that interest, which is equal to the P plus the I. And notice the I here equal to what? P multiplied by N multiplied by I. PNI. So if you just combine it together, like what we said in here, for that one, take a common factor of P. So it will be equal to what? 1 plus NI. I don't want to say IN. عشان أحد يقول لي N, I don't know what is that. N, number of periods, I, which is the interest rate. That's the simple interest. This is for simple interest. That's the formula for it. F equal to P multiplied by 1 plus NI or IN. هيخلوها عندكم. Remember this. This for the simple. Later on we'll see different formula with the same idea, but for a compound. We'll see what to do with that N. Then the only thing will differ with the compound. N, we're going to move it from here to put it later on as a power. We'll see that. That's for a compound. But for a simple, today's lecture, we're going to work only with that simple. So interest equal to principal multiplied by number of periods multiplied by interest rate. If you want to find the future again, the principal plus all that interest. This is an example for this. A company loaned money to an engineering staff member for a radio controlled model airplane. The loan is for $1,000 over 3 years at 5% per year. What? Simple interest. What's required from us now? How much money will the engineer repay at the end of 3 years? كم بيدفع بعد 3 سنوات? So how much we have? That 1,000 over 3 years with 5% simple interest. If you go to the formula, if you use the formula now, F equal to, come on, something wrong. F equal to 1,000 to the P, 1 plus IN or NI. So 3 multiplied by 0.05. Again, 0.05. Don't put it 5. لأن هاي الخطأ شفناه. I don't want to say more. A few students, they have that mistake. So don't do it. The 5%, 0.05. So how much to have in here now? $1,150. How much interest? 150. Did the interest? $150. Plus the principal of 1,000, so it will be 1,150. في أي سؤال على هذه؟ Is there any question for this, guys?
Clear, Doctor.
Yes, Ali.
Doctor,
Yes, Taha.
doctor, is it necessary that we should write the formula and do the calculation?
Yes. To substitute directly the formula. Don't put the symbols then substitute. No. Just do the substitution directly.
Okay.
We'll come to the formulation in next lecture, inshallah. We'll show you how to do the formulation. We'll start with the basic thing, then we'll continue till chapter 7 when we have a mix of cash flows and to combine what we are going to see in chapter 2. I'm going to stop here. This is for the compound interest. We'll show it inshallah next lecture. Any question in general for what we did today?
دكتور الفلات ريت هو نفس السمبل؟
الفلات yes it's the same.
اوكي.
بس شو يسوون هناك؟ يحسبونه سنوي بعدين يقسمونه على شهري على 12 per month. بس عشان اعطيكم مثال على دي. For example, if you want to buy a car of علي سوي وياي calculation سريع انت الحين. خلي الكالكوليتر قدامك. $10,000 سوري 10,000 بحريني دينار. بقول لك الريت والله اللي بعطيك اياه الاقل في البحرين بعطيك 3.5% flat rate. وانت تبي تاخذ القرض على 5 years. Knowing that the 5 years is equal to what? How many months? 60 months. 60 شهر. علي وياي؟
وياك يا دكتور.
انزين. Calculate that interest if you want to take it over 5 years. Sorry, calculate the interest. How much you are going to pay for the 5 years. Knowing the interest rate for a flat rate or a simple interest, 3.5. So 10,000 multiplied by
في 5.
how much will be that? Guys, واحد يسوي calculation بسرعة.
$1750.
1750. That's 1,750 Bahraini dinar. Did the interest that you are going to pay it over 5 years for that loan or for that car, which is at the beginning it was 10,000. So how they are calculating this now? The principal 10,000 plus 1,750. After adding together, he divided by 60. So see how much it will be. 11,750 divided by 60.
$195.8.
So per month, you are going to pay that amount. Per month, you are going to pay that amount. Sometimes they are saying, okay, I'm not going to put that 800 fils now, but you are going to pay 195, but for the last installment على آخر شغلة بتدفعها على آخر شهر, that 0.8 multiplied by 60 plus 195. You are going to pay more amount because of that. فهذه هاي طريقة الحسبة مالتهم. If you want to change this, you need to change that one also together. If you are going to calculate over 4 years, so here it will be 48. من شلون عرفت ان 60 ولا 48 ولا 72؟ الاربع سنوات فيها 48 شهر، الخمس سنوات فيها 60 شهر. والحسبة عندكم كل ما تقلل بيكون اقل، كل ما تقلل السنوات بيكون الانترست اقل، فانت بتدفع اقل هنا. Hope that's clear guys. طلعنا يعني مو بارت من الشغل مالنا، بس to explain how the bank or what they are doing. Now guys, for the calculation for the quizzes, بس عشان اعطيكم الdates. The last discussion with the dean, we agree to have or to tell us that to have one midterm only one midterm, and that midterm will be out of 30%. I'm going to upload inshallah the syllabus today, or okay, today inshallah I'll upload it. The first quiz in week 3, and by the way all the quizzes will be in Wednesdays. بس ايام الاربعاء. At 6 o'clock. In week 3, week 6, week 12 and week 15. التواريخ 23 2 16 2 27 سوري 16 3 27 4 and في واحد ما يعرف عربي. The 23rd of this month, 16th of March, 27th of April اللي هو تقريبا end of Ramadan, and the last quiz 18th of May, just 2 weeks before the final, almost 2 weeks before the final, او حتى اقل 10 days before the final, لان الفاينل مالكم تاريخ 28. الميد تيرم it will be in Ramadan, so to make sure that all of you to attend the midterm with no problem, so we decide, or after coordination of Dean and security, that to have it in Saturday. It will be on Saturday at 11 o'clock, 9th of April, 9/4. Why to put it at 11 o'clock? بتكونوا صايمين، بتكونوا شوي قايمين متأخرين، ف 11 o'clock will suit all of you, or let's say 90% of you. ما نبي نسوي وقت متأخر لأن خلاص نهاية النهار شوي بتكون عليكم تعب والتركيز بقل. 4 quizzes, we are going to take the 4 quizzes. No best of. الأربعة بنحسبون مثل ما هم الأربعة. No best of. ما حد يقول don't say at the end why not to give us why not to count 3 out of 4 or to take the best 3 quizzes and to leave one of them. It's 4 out of 5 quizzes, sorry, 4 out of the 4. لأن هذه بروح حق الكواليتي. Since we are going to put this, so we need to stick to it. And because of high number of students, we cannot play around with them. Okay, شباب. Guys.
تمام دكتور.
Okay. تمام شباب. So please just go to the end of the book, try to solve problems for the first chapter. Once we finish from that chapter, don't say it's easy or we have not seen something or anything more special things. No, just read the problems. I want you to read the problems just to get the feeling before we go to chapter 2. Okay, guys?
تمام.
اوكي موفقين ان شاء الله، نشوفكم ان شاء الله المحاضره الجايه. السلام عليكم.
ثانك يو دكتور.